Hey everybody, Coach Keith Kepner, and we're going to talk about something that I don't see talked about very much, and it sometimes just sounds really fanciful and stupid, and I think that's why, because sometimes people, one, don't understand it, or two, feel embarrassed to talk about it because they feel like they're going to get judged. So we're going to talk about this tool that is very beneficial to you as a boxer and to help you get past some bottlenecks in your progress, or just help you get to the next level. I've seen it have a positive impact on a lot of people, including myself, and that's visualization. And visualization, particularly as it pertains to boxing training. All right. Now, I try to be a scientifically minded person, and there is support for this. It's not just something that somebody from some type of positive self help thing said, hey, visualize yourself as a champion and you're going to be a champion. I'm not going to talk about that. And it's also not that beneficial to talk about that. But what we're going to talk about is the most useful stuff that we can do with the mind, because that is the one thing that does separate us from everybody else on this planet that's objective, that's not subjective, is our mind, the power of our mind. And so let's leverage that. And you see it all the time with number one and number two boxers, or number one and number 10. Your top 10 in the world for boxers, or of any division or any sport, it's not so much this dramatic physical difference, particularly when you're talking about long-term success, not just a spike of then them happening to climb to the top but not sustaining it. But people who sustain success or sustain a past of progress that they continue on to the future, uh, the difference isn't physical. It's something. It's something up here. And so let's talk about that and how we can leverage it. All right. So first off, if you haven't heard about this, a free throw study that was done back in 1982, right? What the hell's that have to do with boxing? Well, sports. And it's a pretty objective way to measure the power of visualization. Of course, there's a lot more on this, but it was the first one that really came out, and it's cited a lot. And it was the first one that I heard in a few different books on the topic. So they had two different, rather, I believe three, because I believe they had a control. So they had a control, and then one group of people practice free throws for 4 weeks, and the other group just visualize free throws. And then the control group obviously did nothing. And they measured their accuracy rate over so and so many throws before the test started and at the end of the 4 weeks. And it's amazing to see what happened with it. And this has been replicated in a few different ways, but let's look at what the results were to see if maybe visualization might be of use to you in boxing or whatever combat sport you might be doing, which is probably boxing, or at least I hope it's boxing. Well, with the mental imagery group, over 4 weeks, they improved their free throw accuracy by 23%. The people that actually practiced, I believe it was 3 days a week, actually practiced their free throw, improved by 24%. So at least in this one study, which again, one study is not the gospel, right? It's not the the Bible of end all be all, no questioning it. But at least in this one study, which was really impactful as far as people utilizing or understanding the importance of visualization, you had a 1% difference between the two groups. Now you could say things like sample sizes and everything else were not that large. Yes. But nevertheless, that is a guide, or it's a thread that we can pull to see what we can do to up our level with ourselves as boxers or whatever we're trying to do. Now, of course, there's many studies that also demonstrate the same thing. All right, and varying levels of of impact, but regardless, they all do have a level of impact, at least from my understanding of looking at what the meta results are and everything else. Now, let's talk about a boxer, the first boxer who beat Jack Dempsey, who, of course, most people know who that is, but for those that don't, he was the 1920s equivalent of Mike Tyson. And, super feared, vicious type fighter, knocking people out. And, of course, like you guys know that are boxing historians, Tyson had a lot of inspiration from the character of Dempsey. And he became almost a larger than life legend, or he is. And the first guy to beat him, though, used what we're talking about. And that was in 1926. A guy named Gene Tunney. What he did was he not only watched film of Dempsey, looking at his moves, studying what he did, what his tendencies were, and everything else, but he actually sat there and every night visualized himself from the first person, seeing the moves that Dempsey would do, reacting to it, countering it, moving out of the way, blocking it, and doing everything he needed to do to be victorious. And he did that every single night, in addition to his regular training and sparring and everything else that he would do to prepare. And then, of course, watch the film so that he could therefore get that data, particularly for Dempsey. And of course, it resulted in him in 1926, or maybe it was 1929. I don't have the date right here, being the first guy ever to beat Jack Dempsey. And a little bit of a controversial fight. I think it was the one with the long count and things like that. But nevertheless, someone that did something that at the time very few people thought could be done, he used the power of visualization to do it. So therefore, might be a good tool for you to use. You might not be at the situation where you're fighting for the heavyweight title, but whatever situation you're at, it's the equivalent of that for you right now. So let's use all of the resources we have. And perhaps the most powerful resource you have in a skilled sport is your mind, once you've built up your physical prowess to a certain degree. My own experience with visualization. I knew of the importance of it and learned about it more and more, working with my father, who was not only a professional boxing coach, but also a PhD in neuroscience and a clinical psychologist. He actually put together some tapes at one time. I don't have them. They got lost, as it is with, that's where, thank goodness, things are on the internet now, so it's easy to find them. But we're talking back in the mid-90s. Tapes that even Oscar De La Hoya said that he listened to, and he complimented my dad on what the tools and the strategies that he talked about. And but it wasn't until both my shoulders got so injured from just Lyme disease and overuse and everything else, and not properly taking care of myself, as well as just, some of us just have injuries sometimes. And it wasn't until I was at a point where I literally couldn't throw a punch anymore. I had nothing else to do. I couldn't train anymore, but I needed to give my shoulders a rest, and I wanted to continue progressing in boxing. I'm down in Mexico at this time, living in a little cabin on a little plot of land that my parents had a house. And what am I to do with my time? Watch film, keep in shape with my legs and everything else. But what am I going to do to make myself better at boxing? I don't want to go backwards. And that's where visualization was the only option. I couldn't spar, couldn't hit mitts, couldn't even shadow box, because I just needed to give my shoulders a rest. Because it was time and time again of me trying to just only do a few of those things, and they weren't getting better. So every night I would sit there and turn on this little round timer they get from Everlast, little like pocket, almost like a beeper. I don't know if they still make those, because probably with apps, right? Anyway, and I would sit there and I'd visualize myself sparring, and I'd visualize my opponent across the ring from me. And when I got back to sparring, I didn't skip a beat. I was actually better. There are certain things that I was able to work on. And I'll tell you what the most important was, which was a huge revelation for me, because at this time, I was boxing for a few years, and my dad would tell me to loosen up, and I would hear him. I would try to do that, but somewhere I wasn't loose, and it probably led to some of my shoulder challenges as well. But with the first time I really got myself in the right proper mindset, that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and really in that place where my mind and my body really believes that I'm in that ring, across the ring from someone else that I'm about to go against, I felt a little tension come up in my shoulders, just a little bit of detectable tension that all of a sudden came up when the round started. And right then and there, that little bit made a world of difference alone. because, oh, okay, now I know where the tension is and I can feel where it is. And once the unconscious becomes conscious, it will no longer rule our life, and we won't call it fate. We have control over it now, right? It's a great line, is that um, you want to take things, or you have things that are unconscious and they rule your life, and you call them fate, but you have to make them conscious. And then once you do that, you're able to control them. So I was able to identify that, get that taken care of. Guess what? When I started actually boxing, my punch output went up, my speed went up, my snap went up, um, my shoulders were better because there was less pull on the different muscles and overworking of it beyond just the punches that were being thrown. The traps were tight, pulling on the shoulder muscles and everything else, and that's a problem that I see a lot of guys have. And so that alone made a world of difference. But also, I continued using it. I did this every night, and man, it can make a big difference for you. And it really helped me get over the biggest hump I had of executing what we were practicing and actually doing it, right? Because have you ever experienced that, where you do your stuff on the bag, you do your stuff on mitts, you do your stuff in shadow boxing, maybe you do your stuff in sparring the way you're supposed to do, but then when it's time for a fight, you don't do the stuff you're supposed to be doing, or you don't do it enough, and you have these things which are just these chinks in your armor that you got to clear up. This might be the place to do it. All right. So let's jump into it. How often do we do this? Well, if you're a serious boxer, meaning that you're serious about progressing, right? It doesn't matter if you're starting and you've just started sparring, or you're a professional fighter in any level in between that and above that, because obviously there's many levels to a professional fighter. Just about every night, build that daily discipline. It's easier to do something all the way than do it partially, right? And what's cool about the way I'm going to tell you to do this is that you can do it every night because you make it small. You make it easy. It's not like, oh man, I'm going to visualize an hour every night. It's going to be hard to keep, right? Want to keep things small, simple, and digestible. And but also too, what's so beautiful is that, and what makes it so effective, is that you're compounding your progress so much more than the guy that spars once a week, or spars even a couple times a week, which I recommend not doing it more than twice a week, depending like how good you are and how low the level is that you're sparring against, but and how much you're getting hit. Nevertheless, this allows you, when done right and with practice, because you're not going to be good at this in the beginning. By the way, people who are bad at this in the beginning will get the most benefit from doing it. All right? If you're really good at this in the beginning, it means it's actually not that useful. It makes it dramatic. It's kind of like with weight training, right? If you start weight training and you're like, dang, I'm super weak, this is super hard, then you have all of the reward to gain from it. Versus if you start weight training and you're like, man, this is easy, I'm used to weight training, and then the stimulus you're doing is not that much benefit, and it probably won't form into much benefit into your boxing. But if you're someone who's never done these things, if you're someone like me, I went through high school not being an athlete and being sick with Lyme disease and smoking a pack a day of cigarettes and smoking weed every day and doing everything else that you shouldn't be doing. I didn't have an aerobic base. So therefore, playing in some type of aerobic activity had a dramatic benefit for me versus someone who's already a high school athlete and whatnot. If they've already been doing aerobic activity and they maybe plug it in or don't plug it in, it might not have that much of a big of an impact. At least it's not as much as it would have for someone who's completely out of shape, who never built up the base. All right. Anyway, you're going to do it every day. You're going to do it every day for just a few rounds. If you're amateur, this checks all the boxes. 3 rounds. That's it. You're low level pro, 4 rounds, of course. But let's keep it in that 3 to 4 range, even if you're higher level, right? And then maybe if you're fighting like some 8-round fights, 10-round fights, things like that, then maybe almost like you would do with a long run, right? Do that once, twice a week. But it's going to be very hard. You have to build yourself up to it. That's what I would just recommend. Start off with that, just three 3-minute rounds. And hell, you can even start off with 3 2-minute rounds, 30-second break, because you don't need that much of a break because you're not physically demanding yourself. You're mentally demanding yourself. And do this every single night. Now remember, if you break the chain, if you miss a night, that's okay. Don't create a new habit. Create the habit of doing it. You miss one night, well, guess what? If you miss another night, now you're creating a new habit. You miss one night, get back on top of it. Get back on top of it over and over and over again. And that is where you will see a dramatic difference in just 4 to 6 weeks. And then keep it going. Keep it going. Now let's talk about how we work on this. How do we do it? Okay, I talked about like how often, the amount of time that you're doing it, 9 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes a night. That's it. That's small. Let's talk about how we do it though, okay? First off, you need to shut off all distractions. You just need to sit down, probably sit up straight, right? I'm sitting back a little bit too relaxed, but sit up with your back straight. Or if you want something to support your back, at least sit upright though, feet flat on the floor. You can take your shoes off. And focus first on breathing. Just deeply breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. Slow, controlled breaths. You can do a couple slow, big breaths to just slow everything down and be mindful of your breath. And make sure you breathe more through your stomach or your diaphragm, or rather, through your stomach, then up through your chest. Okay? Now, focus on relaxing. You can put your hands flat on your legs. That's what I like to do. And the eyes are open. You're ideally in a quiet place. There's no music playing. There's nothing. You want to eliminate all stimulus because we're focusing. We're intensely focusing while also being relaxed. And then you're going to focus your eyes on one point. You can find a point of light on the wall. Like I would find like a little like red light that would be on an alarm clock or on a computer or something like that, you know, like the one that just sits and stays on or whatever it is. Maybe it's a light outside or just a point on the wall because it's a darker room. You see that point on the wall and you stare at it and you breathe. And you stare at it so long, breathing, that your vision gets a little bit funky, but you just stay staring at it. Then once you've just focused on that one point, right? It doesn't have to be a light. It could be like right now I see a pin up on this, stuck in the wall, staring at that pin, staring. And then once you've stared at it long enough and you feel like you're getting to a relative level of focus and relaxation, turn on your timer. Have your phone ready so you can turn on the timer there. Have a YouTube round timer, whatever it is. Have the old school little beeper looking thing, right, that I had back in 2009. And turn that on. And you hear that ding, 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 right? And your eyes are closed. You see that person across the ring. You see them with exactly what they would have on. You see them with, if you're an amateur, they have the helmet on. I mean, I guess, I know in some areas now they do no helmet, cool. But you see them in their exact attire. Or let's say you're new to boxing, you've never fought before, but it's in sparring. You see the person that you spar, that you have trouble against, or someone else that you spar. Best is the person that you have trouble against, if you know that person. And you see them exactly in that environment. You're in that ring, right? The competition ring or the sparring ring. They're dressed the same exact way. The same people are there that would be there. Everything's the same. That round has started. You go out there. You execute what you are intending to do. And now you're seeing this through the first person. You're not seeing yourself outside of yourself. You're seeing what you see. You're feeling what you feel, right? There's, I guess, two ideas of the visualization of like what you're feeling internally and what you're doing externally, but you're putting those together. What I would do as well is, and I highly recommend this, is visualize your mistake and your correction. So I would visualize myself maybe missing a punch or doing the wrong thing, getting hit by a punch, but reacting appropriately in that time after that, right? So, because for instance, like one thing that a lot of people have challenges with, and I know I did, is you'll maybe block some punches, get hit by a couple punches, but not return fire. Whereas the best fighters, guy that comes to mind, Evander Holyfield, gets hit by a right hand, comes back with a right hand. Those type of habits. Imagine those habits in the ring. Imagine even you getting freaking hurt, right? You getting buckled by a body shot, and that feeling that you now know represents how it feels. but you hiding it away and you reacting and adapting and still being victorious, right? So you think of the most immediate or the most highest level of domination. You go out there and you freaking just double, triple jab combination, rip into this, and you're doing it effortlessly in your own experience of this visualization. You're hurting them. You're putting punches together. You're seeing openings. They're shooting, trying to hit you. You're making them miss perfectly. Maybe occasionally something gets through, tags are cool, but you react just like a good fighter would and do the next thing that needs to be done. And then as well, some of these more extreme situations sprinkled in there so that, again, we're training the mind and then therefore also training the body, the whole system, that when those moments come up in the ring, you've already been there before. You don't have the question of, well, what am I going to do? You've already trained that over and over and over and over and over again. And because, like, me as a shorter boxer, right? I'd visualize myself coming in with a jab or double, triple jabs, and someone coming over with a right hand or coming up under with an uppercut and ripping my head up. And then I would imagine myself doing the right move next. Maybe I'd feint it. Maybe while I'm double, triple jab, I'd actually catch that counter the next time and then counter the counter and dig into them, get them up against the ropes, put the body and the head together, drop them. And so you run through all these, and it doesn't have to, at least especially in the beginning, it doesn't have to all make linear sense in a round. Okay, so it doesn't have to be, oh, I started the round and now he's over here and now he's over there. It's going to be little pieces, little pieces, little pieces. And then as you get better at it, perhaps it flows into one full continuous. But man, that's a high level. If you can do that, awesome. That's great. But be okay if it's just pieces, 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 sequences. This is going to happen, then this happens, that type of thing. And again, we're just building it up, and your mind's going to wander. That's okay. That again means it's good for you. Your mind's going to wander. You're going to think about something else. You're going to think about not what you're supposed to be thinking about. You're going to maybe even visualize something that is like absolutely you doing the wrong thing, like completely bar none. You get nailed, you're hurt, and you feel the doubt in your own heart that, like, why am I doing this? Or, all those feelings that you might feel sometimes when someone's beating the hell out of you. But this is, again, the opportunity to really pinpoint that feeling and then take control of it in a controlled situation, because that's the time to do it. And you have to do this hard work. And if you do this hard work, I've seen it dramatically improve people time and time again, and it dramatically improved my performance. If anything, because then not long after I started visualizing, I got my neck injury, tried to fix it, interfere with my spinal cord, and I still tried to fix it. And I debated that whole thing that sometimes people debate when you do something and you're not doing anything else with your life, and you have a GED and you don't have a girlfriend and you don't have any friends and you have nothing except this one thing called boxing. I debated some of those things that you might debate in that situation about what might be the path moving forward. But it wasn't too long before I got injured after implementing this. But man, during that time that I did it, and the times that I've had people I've worked with use this to either just elevate their performance in general or get them over a stumbling block, really change a stumbling block and flip it into a stepping stone. It's powerful, really powerful stuff. All right. So again, to wrap up, the mind, your mind as a boxer is the most important tool you have. You can have a guy or gal, whatever, whoever you are, that is the same exact makeup as you physically. Same type of bone, same density, same weight, same strength, same conditioning, same discipline with all that stuff. But the one of you that has the better mind, the one of you that has practiced more, the moves with your body in sparring, in fights, but also in those alone times, the visualization times. You've seen it in your mind's eye time and time again. That you would beat the hell out of the other one. So keep that in mind. All right, guys? I hope this has been beneficial for you guys. Changing it up a little bit with this concept here, but it's something long overdue that I feel like someone watching, one person watching this right now, it's going to make a big difference for you. All right, guys? Click like, click subscribe, comment below, let me your thoughts. If you really like this video, leave me a super thanks or consider subscribing, being a channel member. Level 2, you can send me film of you sparring, training, fighting, and I'll give you an in-depth breakdown video of every single thing that I see that you're doing well and where there's opportunity for you to improve and how to improve it. All right, guys? Really appreciate your support. Watch out for the next video.